We got Janet Henson, Director of Surveillance at PHENIX. Welcome to the podcast. This is long anticipated.
Yes, it is. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, Janet, I've heard your name a lot, all good things. How long have you been at PHENIX Investigations?
So I've worked with PHENIX. I've been employed with PHENIX for about a year and a half, but I've worked with PHENIX for about 15 years. I worked as a contractor with them, and I covered their California area.
Okay, so you've been with working in the PHENIX ecosystem for a long time. That's
Yeah.
one of the longest tenures, I would imagine, aside from Brian.
Right, yeah.
So,
I'm right there with Andrew. I've been working with Andrew since the beginning, really.
oh, that's awesome. So, what were you doing before? So, you've been doing surveillance your entire career?
Yes, for the most part, when I originally started, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to do process serving. That was the start of it, and then it just went from there to pretty much conducting all sorts of investigations. But for PHENIX, in the beginning, I did most of their surveillance in California.
Awesome. Are you in California now?
No, now I'm actually in North Carolina.
Okay, so you went all the way to the opposite side. How long have you been in
Thank you.
NC?
About 2 years, which is why I came on to Phoenix. I was like, I'm not gonna start here again and all that. I'm just gonna, they called and asked if I was interested, and I absolutely loved working with them. And I was like, yes, I am.
Awesome. And the rest is history. Um,
Yep.
so I always like to start with what is the external, non-professional perception of surveillance, and I think you have a good idea of what it is. Stakeouts, car, donuts, Chinese food containers. Tell me what
Exactly.
it's actually like.
There's a lot of downtime. A lot of people don't realize that because 9 times out of 10, you don't know the subject's activity and what they're going to do, their dailies or whatnot. So you literally are sitting there waiting for them to become active. And that could be 5 minutes after you get there, or that can be 8 hours after you get there. And when they become active, your day starts. So there's a lot of doubles, a lot of long shifts and whatnot. Knowing when to, if you do have to stop surveillance for a minute or get gas or something like that because you followed them a bunch of places and now you're running low because it happens. You have to time it all right so you don't lose your target. So there's a lot to it that people don't realize. You fill up every day before you leave or get there, but sometimes you run out and you have to get more.
So it sounds like planning and preparation are a big part of successful surveillance. What do you think makes a great surveillance investigator?
One that can stay on the target.
Um,
They go to a lot of different places, and so if you can stay on the target, you're a good surveillance investigator.
so planning, prep, focus. So,
Yeah.
Janet, what are the top reasons why people call in a surveillance investigator? The big television show that I'm sure you've heard about 1,000 times, Cheaters.
hmm
Um, that's infidelity investigations. How real is that? Is that one of the common calls?
It is. We do get quite a few of those, but it's not as much as corporate or insurance related stuff, cargo theft. There's a lot of reasons we do surveillance.
Yeah, and talking to Brian, obviously you guys are really plugged into corporate and B2B type of investigations where they kind of call in the big dogs. What are a few real life examples, or maybe just start with one that comes to mind? What's a big corporate investigation look like?
So we had one that um, involved high-end trading cards. Okay, and so they said that they believed they had one employee that was stealing them, and they wanted him followed. Well, that turned into actually being 6 people involved and thousands of cards taken. And so it ended up going from one person to 2 people to 4 people. And then all of a sudden we had 6 investigators on 6 different people at 6 different residences. and we had to correlate. Okay, we're doing this. They're meeting here. They're meeting there. They're meeting at the pawn shop. And in the end, we were able to figure out who all was involved, where the cards were, where they were storing them, what pawn shops they were trying to sell them at, and we ended up getting them back.
So, I mean, for those that don't know, trading cards can sell for thousands and thousands of dollars, sometimes more. So, this is a serious crime.
Correct.
So, were these
Correct.
all employees of one business, or one employee selling through a network, or what was this?
This was 6 employees involved.
Wow. So,
Hmm.
somehow 6 employees all got together and decided that they were going to participate in a scam of that magnitude?
Yes, and 3 of them were family members. So when you work in a warehouse and you have a family that works with you, there is some potential of them talking and getting with each other far more so than if you didn't have people who knew each other working together.
So it sounds like this is something that might have been preventable through some greater HR controls or something like that. But what was the obviously someone from this business suspected something and hired you all. What did they think when you brought the reports to them after this? It had to be bigger than they thought.
It was bigger, but because of the magnitude of it and how Phoenix is, we were in real time communication with the client. So they knew pretty much the steps that were going each day. Like, hey, this person's involved. Does this person work for you? Yes, they do. Okay, well, they're involved because this person's at the pawn shop. So it's all happening really fast. If there's another subject, we're getting that idea of that subject. Then we're, running a background check on that subject to figure out who he is, and then we're trying to connect it to our target and see if there's a relation. And then the client knows, okay, yeah, they work here, so that's how it all in real time.
So they came to you with suspicion of one specific person being involved, and then it just spidered out from there.
Correct.
How big of a do you know the value of these cards that were taken? Just out of curiosity.
One alone was 100,000.
Oh my God! So this is a big. So these guys are in trouble.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And how they found out was a pawn shop. The target went into a pawn shop and tried to sell it, and the pawn shop owner called the company and said, "I think this may have been stolen from you, from an employee. He's trying to pawn it, and he's not someone that should have this card." And so
Oh,
that's how it snowballed. Yeah,
oh, that's awesome from the pawn shop.
yeah, yeah,
Over what
definitely.
time period did this happen? Just say from initial call to submitting the final report. Over what time period was that?
8 days.
Oh my gosh! So you blitzed through that quickly.
Quickly, very quickly. Yeah, it all happened very fast. So, and that's unfortunately some of these corporate investigations, is pretty much how the surveillance portion of it, that's how fast they go because, they want to get it done, and we're used to that. So you just work around the clock basically until it's done, and then submitted.
So, in something that looks like that, I just like to kind of try and paint a picture of what actually happened. So, this client calls Phoenix, talks about the situation. They meet with you. You begin surveilling the first individual, and then as it gets bigger, you're the quarterback. Kind of is that how it
Exactly.
works?
Yep, facilitating it all. And depending on, the case, and whatnot, there's been times where I've gone to the location, as just before it's going to start, and I'll be in the area or be on the surveillance. It really just depends on the case. But this particular one, yeah, I just oversaw it all, spoke with, and they actually had in-house investigators too, that were involved. And while I was doing, coordinating the surveillance and doing that aspect of it, they were doing in-house and figuring out who these people were when they started, what their shifts are, pulling video to see how they were getting the product. What were they doing in-house to get the product out?
Okay, so you had sort of like a project management role in this as well because you have your surveillance team. Obviously, you guys have a big bucket of resources to pull, and then coordinating with their internal teams to kind of a joint effort to attack this.
Exactly. There was 9 of us total.
Wow, that's a real. It started with trading cards and got that big. That's wild.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
and that's why quite a few do that. Yeah,
that was pretty recent, wasn't it? Like
it
this year.
was. Yeah, yeah, it was back in February, I believe.
Is that a typical case for you, or is that one that's just on the bigger end?
No, a lot of my cases end up going bigger, because I see I have a knack to be able to see the bigger picture and can tell like just that there's something off with this or that, and I end up just pulling in more investigators or different types of investigations, because sometimes you'll be doing one and you're like, oh, we need a social media investigation now, and I pull that in, so it just depends, but yeah, a lot of mine go more.
I obviously we do this with Brian a lot, and I talked to the asset search team last week, and one common thread always goes through this is you're all so experienced, you're able to kind of recognize patterns and kind
Hmm.
of draw on what you've seen before to kind of dictate what you see ahead.
Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of the rule of thumb of investigations. Try to stay one step ahead of them. So you learn that, and if you can get that, you're ahead of the game.
So, Janet, so you said something interesting earlier. So, you spend a lot of time sort of in office coordinating and calling the plays, so to speak, but do you also still go boots on the ground sometimes? Or-
Oh yeah, yep. Still, I was actually just in. I flew to California, conducted an interview there, and then drove to Arizona to conduct an interview there. So yeah, I'm still doing it.
What do you like better? Kind of calling the plays from the office, working with big groups, or do you like going out in the field and kind of getting your hands dirty?
Um, Man, that's a tough one because I do generally enjoy both equally, but I don't really want to do the whole field thing too much anymore. I've kind of done it for many, many, many years, but I will. If they need me, gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, that is a big thing. It sounds like in investigations is ultimately you have to do what you have to do. But someone
Hmm.
at your experience level probably has more value calling the plays like that. Um, for these corporate investigations, how often is it? Does it involve multiple employees? That I can't get off the idea of doing something with like it's a serious felony. Obviously, stealing something like that. How
Hmm.
often do they have the gall to talk to other people and get them involved like that?
More than you think. More than you think, yeah. Because you do need to have other people. Lots of times with like the corporate world, there's so many different types of corporate investigations that you can do. And if let's say you're making shell companies and you're stealing funds, sometimes you have to have other people involved to cover you. So you'll send them an invoice. They'll send it back to you. Act like the shell company because you can't send it to yourself. So lots of times there are multiple people involved.
So
Unfortunately.
when you're doing surveillance and you follow, follow these engaged parties around, how often are you? Do you confront them and ask questions, or are you just making notes, or is it some of both?
Normally, well, it's some of both. It really is. It depends on if we're going to be doing the interview as well after the fact. So if that's the case, then yeah, we'll confront them and talk to them and find out, what's going on and who's all involved and if they still have the product. So it just depends.
Do is it often that you find one and conduct an interview and they spill the beans, so to speak, when they know that they've been
Hmm.
caught?
Oh yeah, just like this high end trading card ones. We got the product back. We told them we needed the product, and the investigator that confronted them, which was an in-house investigator that actually confronted them, um, they gave them the boxes back of the trading cards, so they knew they were caught.
Oh, so they recovered the lost assets in this case.
Hmm. Yep.
Wow, is that common?
Um, that one was a little unusual. I'll be honest with you. That they
Yeah.
were like, "Yeah, here you go." Because it was if you don't give us the product, we know you have it. If you don't give it to us, we're going to the police.
I
So,
assume obviously they were all terminated. Were they
oh
charged with anything, or was it part of the?
no, I don't believe they were because they got the product back. They were more so wanting the product back because it was a big loss.
Wow, that's really
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah.
What's another type? So obviously, the corporate stuff is big, the numbers are big, and the value to your
Mhm.
clients are so big. There any other examples like that? They're fascinating stories you have here.
Yeah, there's one case that we did. We did a multi-state. It was a cargo theft, and you wouldn't believe what it was because when you think cargo theft, you're not going to think of this product. So what it was sugar, large bags of sugar, and we had to follow the driver from California. He went through Arizona, or went through New Mexico, Arizona, and then landed in Texas. And so we had multiple investigators on him. And then as we got into Texas, because we knew he was going to Texas, so when we got to state line in Texas, we had a Texas investigator join us. And all of a sudden, as we're driving, he pulls over curbside, and we're like, well, no, this isn't where he drops his load. And we're looking to see, okay, well, have an investigator sit at this end, have another investigator sit at that end in case another truck comes in, because this might be where he drops, some of the product or whatever. So we're all trying to get in position to figure out what he's doing and whatnot. And he gets out. He opens up the back door, and we're like, there's no truck here. What is he doing? And he starts tossing out these big bags of sugar onto the ground. And we're like, okay, so this is where he's offloading the product he's stealing, but there's nobody here to get it. What is he doing? Well, he pulled curbside next to like a grassy area and a ditch. And the next thing you know, he takes these big bags of sugar, and there were 35 bags, and he tossed them into the ditch, and he leaves. So we have a couple investigators now following him to go to drop the rest of his load, and we have an investigator stay on the product because we need to know who's going to come get this product. He drops his load, he leaves, like he's going back to California. So the investigators follow him back to California, and the Texas investigator stays on him. And at about 12:30 a.m. or so, 1 o'clock, two male pull up in just a regular Ford truck, take the product, and leave. Come to find out, it ended up being like a cousin of his, and then now it turns into, where are they selling this product? What are they doing with it? What do they need with 35 bags of sugar?
Yeah,
And they were selling it for a couple $100 a bag online.
that's such
Yeah.
a huge risk for such a rinky-dink operation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so
But you think about it, it's rinky dink like 35, but how many times is he doing it?
right. Yeah, it just seems like such a huge risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 35 times 200 and doing that weekly or daily, that adds up to really, really big.
Yeah. Exactly. And then the cousins sell it, and then they split it, and there you have it.
You know, it's interesting. A lot of these bigger corporate investigations obviously are, you need multiple people, multiple shifts, covering multiple states. You mentioned, earlier in your career, you were, I guess, an independent investigator. Is that right?
Hmm.
How different is your kind of position doing independent investigations where it's, Janet versus the world and kind of working with Phoenix where you have a wider network? How is that different?
What's different is one, how busy I am. It's the constant cases that are coming in. Obviously, Phoenix is a lot bigger and has a lot more clients than little old Janet had. So there's that. As far as the cases go, it really is one in the same. Theirs is a little bit more complex to some degree than what I did because they really do complex investigations, so that's a little different, but different, but the same as well.
The principles of it are the same, just the scale of it is mostly different.
Exactly. And the amount of investigators that are needed for, because there are a lot bigger. It's like the same type of investigation to some degree, but it's only one person. I wasn't getting the ones that needed six investigators type of thing, you know? So,
Yeah, so you're just able to cater to bigger customers in bigger cases with bigger resources. It's just sort of how it is.
yeah.
Um, what do you think as a long-term professional of the way that investigators are depicted in movies and TV? I always just have to know.
You know, it's kind of funny. I couldn't even watch the Cheaters show knowing that we would never approach. You know, there are certain things that you don't do, and one is you don't tell them where the person is, so they can come and you know have an altercation, because then that actually ends up being on the investigator. There's actually times where the investigator can get in trouble if somebody's injured or something, to you know, so you gotta be smart about it. You don't tell them where you're at, you know. So that was all you know, not true.
Yeah, I mean, it can be entertaining, but so when you have like
Yeah.
when you meet new people, you know, in your friend groups, and they ask, "What do you do for work?" Do you tell them you're a private investigator and just let the questions
Yeah.
fly?
Yeah, sometimes I don't. I try not to tell it at first, you know, but eventually they always figure it out, or and it's talked about too amongst friends, like, oh, have you met Janet? She's a PI, you know, and they're like, no way, you know. So that's kind of, and it always follows with, how do I get into the industry?
It is one of the most, you know, there's not like, it's interesting because there's not a lot of like glamour to it on television and movies, but it is one of the most interesting jobs, I think, to people, because you don't
Hmm.
really know what happens behind the curtain. You know, like even when I tell people that I work for a private investigator organization, that invites a lot of questions and curiosity.
Oh, for sure, it does. It, you know, tell me stories. Tell me what kind of cases have you had? How long did it take you to get licensed? You know, and every state is different. So, you know, if you're going to be multi-state licensed, then you have to have the qualifications of those every state that you're going to get licensed in. So, I'm like, well, it just depends where you live. You know.
Are you? Does it like take a personal license in every state, or is it just Phoenix as an organization has to be licensed in every state?
No, you have to be licensed in every. Well, there's a handful of them that you don't have to be licensed in, and then there's some that reciprocate the. You know, if I'm in North Carolina, I can go into Tennessee, if I'm doing an active case type of thing. So you have to know which ones that is. Um, but most of the states you have to be licensed in or have a licensed investigator working the case. Yeah.
So, you know, obviously experience has a tremendous value and kind of always under thought of value in every industry. You mentioned kind of the recognition of risk and how to handle that is one thing. What are other things that you've observed in more novice investigators that kind of you learn as you learn better as you go along in your career?
Sure. One of the main things is anytime you're going to go into an area, any investigation, you always think of risk versus reward. Is the reward that you're going to get by going and doing this type of investigation, or pulling into this area or asking these questions, worth the reward? If it is not, don't do it. A lot of investigators don't really understand that. And so their thought process is just get it, just get it, just get it. And no, you have to, it's really a teeter totter. You have to really be smart about it so you don't blow your case. And a lot of investigators haven't figured that out.
So, what are some examples of blowing a case that you've seen or heard of? That just means being spotted
Hmm.
sometimes.
Yeah, somebody will realize you're behind them. You know, people call it, you know, you blew the case, or you've been burned, or you know, just different things. We've had one where, you know, from the beginning, you know, that they've sat too close, or you know, something like that, and the person spots their car. So your best bet is to always start, when you're starting an investigation, always start out further, and then as the investigation goes, creep your way in to get that video. So, and it does happen. You know, some subjects are a little bit more alert, watch their surroundings more. And as the investigator, you have to spot that. Are they watching their mirrors? Are they looking around when they get in? If so, you pull off and you talk to the client and say, look, they're watching their surroundings. We're going to need a second investigator. So with your experience, you have to be able to pick that out so you're not burned.
So just like anything, it sounds like if you're in something with relatively high stakes, whether it's six figures in trading cards or, weekly runs of multi-$1,000s of sugar, you need to call an experienced investigator and don't risk blowing the case.
Yeah, exactly.
So, a lot of times when we talk about, when I'm talking to Brian or the asset search team, they talk about kind of obviously everything needs to be legally admissible or there's limited value in these reports. How conscious are you during investigations to stay within guidelines to make sure everything's legally admissible, and what might cause that to become not the case?
Oh yeah, no, you have to. You have to know the laws on following and videotaping and what's allowed, what's not allowed. Are you in a public place and to be able to record? Yeah, no, there's definitely quite a few various legalities that if you blow it and you do something that you're not supposed to and you're called to testify, that even though you've gotten so much video legally, what's going to be focused on is what you did, what you obtained illegally, and the whole thing's going to be thrown out.
Yeah. Is that something that happens in the industry frequently? Having evidence thrown out like that?
Not, I haven't experienced it, just because I won't risk it. I have heard of other people that have experienced it. One of the main things is, so a lot of people will go to the gym. And some gyms you're not allowed to videotape in, and they have signs. So if there's a sign that says no video footage allowed inside or whatnot, then you have to be careful and not do that. There's investigators that just don't, and then they end up with getting in trouble or the case gets thrown out. Or so I've seen that a couple times.
So I guess like anything, sometimes just in the heat of the moment, you forget about the little things that actually matter. Yeah. And that's a lot of what experience allows you to do, is think of all of the things during the heat of the moment.
Yeah. Adrenaline gets the best of you. And so you just follow them in, think you're going to get the video, and you're not paying attention. Is there a sign posted in here somewhere?
So, Janet, I want to close out this conversation with one question. Obviously, there's a lot of follow-up topics to talk about on future podcasts.
Sure.
As the director of surveillance, say I'm hired at PHENIX Investigations as a brand new surveillance investigator. I'm sitting across from your desk, and you have to give me one piece of advice. What would that piece of advice be?
Don't take your eyes off the subject's home. If you're going to go out there, just lots of times they'll be on their phone and they'll look up and their car will be gone. Because they're not realized. So don't take your eyes off the subject's home.
God, it's funny how sometimes it's so simple how to do it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, and because you don't, as a new investigator, you don't think, you're just looking up, looking down, looking up, looking down, and so that would be what the main thing I would tell them is, line of sight.
I imagine you say that because you've probably gotten some calls from more novice investigators that have gone along the lines of, "Yep, I lost him."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Years,
yeah. Janet, this was awesome. I appreciate you hopping on. I hope you're willing to do more of these. You've got just endless stories from the road.
I do, and absolutely. Anytime you want me to do it, just let me know, and I'll jump on and talk with you.
This was Janet Henson, the Director of Surveillance at PHENIX Investigations. So you'll see her again, and thanks for watching.